Welcome to the Northwestern State Coaches and Special Guest Roundtable. Looking back 2 years ago at the first Southland Conference Tournament Championship in school history. With us today, head coach Bobby Barbier, assistant coaches Chris Bertrand, Taylor Dugas, Spencer Goodwin, who is an assistant coach now, was a GA on that staff. And of course, we'd be remiss not to introduce the Southland Conference Player of the Year, the Southland Conference Tournament MVP, current Milwaukee Brewer farmhand, David Fry, joining us today. So, guys, it's been it would be about a day and a half from when we're filming this to the actual anniversary, but we'll go back and take a look at a lot of different things today. But Coach Barbier, let's start with you. 2 years ago, you guys made history. I thought going back afterwards, Lane Burroughs had a great tweet after the game a couple of days saying the guys that have sat in your chair that have gone on to do great things haven't done what you've done. But looking back 2 years, what were the emotions for you? I know you and I talked after the game, but that was a minute and a half, 2 minutes. You got a little bit more time now.
Yeah, it was actually the first time I watched the whole game, watching it back for this, and it was fantastic. It brought back all those memories and emotions, and I think more importantly, just seeing the players. You don't get to see their emotions as much, when you're in it. As far as when Dave gets the big hit, against Nichols. When Dave hits the homer. Glad Dave's here. He's big reason why it happened. So, but I think you don't get to enjoy those moments a lot, when you're in the middle of it. And it was neat to get back and watch it, and just some of the things that stood out were just all the people from Natchitoches showed up. Our athletic department, I see videos from the stands and see Coach Laird there, and all the football staff and other sports that are too many to name. So that was really neat going back and watching it. And obviously the baseball itself can be a little boring, but when you got some invested interest like that, it was a lot of fun.
Coach mentioned it at 6 o'clock on May 26th, Tuesday, so about a day and a half from when we're shooting this. We will re-air the entire ESPN broadcast of that championship game on nsudemons.com. This will actually serve as the lead into that. We're going to put this on ahead of the replay of the game, so chance to see it from these guys' perspective going into that game. And Bob mentioned it, David Fry, what he did in that tournament, just went back and looked. The second round game, he scores the tying run against Southeastern in the ninth inning. The semifinal game, he triples home. Double Dave triples home the tying run, scores the winning run, and then, of course, the home run. And you guys have been with him. Spence, you played next to Dave for a couple of years. And how comfortable did you feel, even as a GA, when you watched him at the plate, certainly in those seventh inning or later situations?
Oh, beyond confident, that's for sure. I remember that the home run in the seventh, I was actually in the bullpen, and I think Ridge was actually trying to get hot for that situation. Who obviously was our Friday night guy, but it was kind of down to it, and Ridge was like starting to get hot. Dave's at the plate, and he hits the homer, and obviously it was me, Ridge, and Tyler Thibodeau losing our minds down there. And I remember it went over the fence, and Tibbs like sprinting at me from the plate. And we're jumping up and down, losing our minds. But yeah, no doubt. Anytime a situation like that comes up and you got Dave walking to the plate, something good's going to happen.
Well, Bob, you played in a tournament championship game. And Taylor, you and I talked about, I think, the day of the game, because you've been having played at Alabama. When you got to the SEC tournament, you pretty much knew your ticket was punched to a regional. You and I talked. I know it was a little different for you, A, as a coach, but B, knowing that it was kind of a winner-take-all moment to get to a regional.
Yeah, absolutely. Till this day, it's probably one of the most nervous I've ever been for a game. And it's, me and Barbier talk about, I remember when I started coaching, he said, you're going to be way more nervous coaching than you ever were playing. And that was true. And this game, I had some jitters before the game. And it just cool to, remind just to talk about all this and remember all those moments. And something else that it was such a big game that you win or go home, make a regional or the season's over. And I still laugh to this day, remembering before the game, Coach Myatt, our strength coach, being around the team, and he couldn't even form words, and he was trying to talk to the guys, and he said, let's go. And then the team breaks away, and I remember talking to him like, hey, are you good? Are you nervous? He's like, I'm so nervous. And obviously he played football and everything, and it just doesn't compare. But you're right. Win or go home. It was very nerve-wracking before that game started for me, especially.
You guys 3-0 in the first 3 games of the tournament. You had what a lot of people would have said was the advantage. You had rested arms. You had 3 great pitchers in Ridge Heisler, who was mentioned earlier, Jerry Maddox, and Nate Jones, who the first 3 games saved your bullpen. And I think during the game, they made a mention of David Saltzman and Greg Swindell and McCall made a mention of that when talking about the Demons. But New Orleans had a lot of momentum. And Bert, I know from your perspective, when you watch a team get hot like they did, I mean, they played till 1 or 2 in the morning, came back, won the game at 1 o'clock, and only had a couple hours rest. When they got the couple of runs in the first, mentally, where were you guys? Because you probably felt, with Warzik on the mound, they threw their best guy, and they've got the early momentum. But for you guys, what was that feeling at that moment going into the top of the second?
Not a ton of concern on our part, just because I know, especially where I'm sitting, kind of running numbers and thinking about stuff and trying to get in Bob's ear or get in Taylor's ear. Early on, it wasn't that much of a concern, because I think when you run those numbers, you get to see exactly what you led in with, is that how long can he really go, throwing 110 pitches 2 days ago. It's our 3rd game in less than 24 hours. We have all of the advantages that you mentioned. And so the idea is that you just execute well enough to keep the game within striking distance, and not let it get too far away from you, because you feel like at that point you really have a chance. Not to mention the fact that they also mentioned in the pregame broadcast, and we had discussed all 3 of our games leading up to the championship game, everything we did was pretty much late game, call it, late game heroics or whatever the case. So we had 3 days of experience of close ball games. And, with a rested bullpen, Jose had not thrown in the first 2 games. He only threw 16 pitches against Nichols in the semifinal game. So we know Jose's back there rested. Our starters had gone deep into the ball game 3 games in a row. So the bullpen's rested. And we had 3 days worth of experience of late game heroics. And so honestly, not a ton of concern running the numbers, but you didn't want it to get too far away, right? Like, you didn't want them to get momentum to where they ride the wave and it gets out of touch. But as long as the game is in touch and is within striking distance, that's what we kept talking about between Bob and Taylor and I.
Well, the offense woke up in the second inning, and I think sometimes we forget, and we tend to gloss over things that little things that when you look back, and if you just had a box score, we obviously all 5 or 6 of us had a chance to watch this game on a replay, and the general public will as well this Tuesday evening. The little things within that second inning, Kelsey Richard working from an 0-2 count to a walk, Juan Adkins nearly beating out a sac bunt to set up the first of 2 go-ahead RBIs for David Fry in that game. I think a lot of people may have forgotten that he knocked in a go-ahead run in the second. But, Coach, you're a guy that we all know you don't like to bunt. You don't like your guys to bunt. And for him to do that, for Kelsey to work a walk, the momentum there, as Bert said, you kept it to 2 runs, and you jump out and put a 4 spot on him. At that point, Uncle Mo's in the Demon dugout.
Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot about games like that in specific situations for whatever reason. So going back and watching it, I could see my dad and my grandfather in the background. I can just see it on their face how mad they are at me for not bunting Kelsey there. It's just I can tell it in their eyes, and it goes 0-2, and it's even worse. And we just, I just feel like in that situation, he was we need to get pitches out of him, and he was struggling finding the strike zone. And it's one of those deals where if you get a good bunt down, well, now you got left on left with Quan coming up, and now he feels more comfortable pitching because there's a base open. So I just thought it kept the pressure on them. Now, Kelsey grounds dull play, and, it looks terrible, but it's just kind of the way we played, and it's not – we weren't going to change how we played, because of the situation. It's how we played all year long. And we trusted our guys, and Kelsey came through with a good at-bat there. And, took some close pitches. It was a really tough at bat. I thought Forzak made some good pitches in that AB. So it was, it was kind of nerve wracking. Even though I knew it was happening, watching it back, going, man, I hope he doesn't ground out in double play here. Kind of would crush our momentum, but it kind of kept us going a little bit.
Dave, as a hitter in that lineup, the first inning he struck out 3, he hit 2 guys. So you guys, he wasn't nearly as sharp as he'd been, and you guys saw him the weekend before. I mean, UNO was the final conference series of the season. So a week before the championship game, you were down in New Orleans. But the second inning, once Lenny beats out the infield hit and Ricka gets the hit and things start going, you and I talked after the Nichols game the night before. You said, we're having a hell of a time. We're just playing ball. Was that kind of the attitude that kept this going the way it did? Because you got up big, they come back and tie it, which we'll get into here in a minute. But was that kind of the way everyone felt toward the end of that tournament?
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty loose the whole tournament. I mean, kind of speaks to the staff. They let us be pretty loose. I remember going into games and Dan's got the jukebox on his shoulder playing music as we're rolling into the stadium, as HBU's like losing out of the tournament, parents are crying and we're playing music. But the talk before was obviously they had their dude going, but he was on 2 days rest, and kind of work him a little bit and make him throw some pitches. Obviously, first inning he made us look really bad, but we knew he wouldn't be able to last very long. And one thing Spencer did all year, and he did good in that game, he talked to a bunch of the hitters, and he was able to see something in his delivery where he may have been tipping pitches when he's throwing his breaking ball, which allowed us to kind of lay off some good pitches because he had a really good breaking ball. And I think that was how we were able to get him out of the game pretty quickly after a couple innings.
You guys did that. You put up 4 in the second inning, and then it looked like Danny kind of settled in a little bit. I know in the mid-game interview, Bob, you said you wanted to get him through the lineup twice. You got him through about 1.5 times, but again, the importance of staying in the winner's bracket, which allowed you to be able to mix and match the guys you used in that game, was beyond important.
Yeah, and Danny was kind of a warrior for us right there. He was end of the year, his arm was tired, his velocity was down. Kind of making the decision to go with him was just we trusted him. We trusted Dan. He was a guy that kind of had been through it all, and we knew that the nerves wouldn't get to him, in a game like that. So we're going to see how long ago we didn't have this grand idea that he would throw a complete game. We kind of knew what he had left in the tank. So which allowed us to have, other guys ready, to go. And I thought, the entire time, and we pitched it really, really well, in that tournament, which allowed us, like you said before, to have that staff ready to go. If you look back, I was telling Coach Berg actually this morning that we faced every team's ace, and it's hard to imagine, but whether in relief or starting in the 4 games of the tournament, we faced every team's ace, and we never had to throw a starter more than their one time. And that goes to those guys being really good, obviously, but having the course of the year developing guys, and guys that for certain situations, and I thought those arms. They didn't change anything. Dave mentioned being loose and things like that. We had a thing going for about the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season where we didn't even talk to them a whole bunch. I think I'm of the camp of the more you meet, the more in trouble you are. And we didn't have to do a whole lot with those guys. We had a lot of leaders on the team that kind of took that team over. And great teams are led by those guys and by the players, and we just kind of guide them a little bit. So those guys deserve all the credit for this thing.
the seniors on that team, there were only four. We mentioned Kelsey. We mentioned, obviously, Dave's here. We mentioned Danny. Quan Adkins, everyone knows that followed this team the year he had with the bat. His metamorphosis from a guy who was a lot of potential into realized potential as a senior, but the play he made on the ball in the gap in the third or the fourth inning. Taylor, you're a former outfielder. Just walk us through that one. I mean, obviously, if he's not 6'2", 6'3", he probably doesn't make that catch. But the defense you guys played, outfield, Tyler Smith has a big outfield assist in this game to nail a guy at second base on a potential leadoff double. But those guys in the outfield all year long, and I think it just kind of all again showed up at the right time for them to show what they're able to do.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big league play by Quan. I mean, there's no other way to put it. The read was quick. I mean, he read it off the bat. First step. I mean, and obviously once Quan gets rolling, I mean, he's 6'3", and the strides take over, and he covers more ground than really a lot of people out there. I mean, so he's just got it. He was always a good defender. The really good routes, and obviously that was such a big catch. As for the outfield in general that year, I mean, Tyler, he had so many outfield assists that year, and he's really good in right field. I mean, he's above average out there, and really good reads, and he's really accurate with his throws. I mean, that's something he still shows to this day. And obviously he got so much better with throws throughout that year, and you don't win. You don't win without good defense. Obviously, we pitched it really well that whole season, especially in this tournament. And then, you got to make big plays in big games, and I think those guys did that.
You get up 5-2 after Dave scores again to increase the lead. They come back with 3 in the bottom of the 5th, and you don't do much offensively in the 6th, and then you go to Jose. And the first couple of guys get on, and suddenly – again, it looks like momentum is back in New Orleans' dugout, but we just talked about defense, and Bert and Spence, you guys as kind of infielders and infield coaches. The play Jose made on the bunt, we can talk about what Sam Taylor did because he did it from the time he walked on campus to the day he walked off defensively. But the play Jose made on the bunt, what did that do for you guys? Obviously, it keeps the double play in order, which he gets a couple of pitches later, but to slow the momentum they had at that point, obviously a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's almost like it's the perfect lead-in. And again, trying to kind of use what had taken place throughout the season, throughout the tournament. Jose getting himself into a little bit of early trouble in his appearances and then working himself out of it was nothing new to us, and so it wasn't that far out of place. It seems like it's magnified because it's happening in a championship game and because momentum at that point is so crucial in every moment, but not anything that we had really not seen throughout the season. And so the biggest idea is that everybody in the dugout kind of keeps a level head about it, that everybody in the dugout realizes that this is kind of business as usual for the Demons. And again, because of such a good lead-in, or because that's the conversation point, you got Rick over there, you got Sam Taylor over there. We know not a whole bunch is going to fall in the outfield. We know that at the time we're swinging the bats pretty well. I mean, the scores and the numbers kind of irrelevant. We are swinging the bat pretty well. We've got enough confidence to say that we're not going to change the way we play offense, right? We're not going to start bunting or doing all kinds of crazy things. And so Bob's got a good control of it. Taylor's got a really good control of it. We know what's there. And no matter what situation popped up, I felt like it's important to address it. But at the same time, it's not anything that we hadn't seen from our club or from Jose, or anything that we couldn't learn from some experiences in the very, very distant past.
Spence, got anything to add to that?
Yeah, to go along with what Bert said, like I remember that year, every time we had a really, really good staff when it came to PFPs and pickoffs, and like they were athletic. And I remember all fall and spring. I mean, we'd do PFPs and it'd be 5 minutes. We'd roll through it and it'd be clean and we'd be done. We'd move on to the next thing. And I think that just goes to show you that on that play that Jose made, I mean, you couldn't have played it better. I mean, he was off the mound fast and was already in a good position to make the throw. And I mean, yeah, it was bang, bang, but that just goes to show you that that staff, I remember, like, I mean, Nate Jones and Ridge and Pig and all those guys, just they took so much pride in those PFPs in practice, and then it showed up in the game, and then it was like it was nothing. I mean, he did it, perfectly. And then, like you said, he got the double play there, the turn over the bag from Ricka. I mean, that was, perfectly played. So I think the whole play and situation was just it came from what those guys did and how much pride they took in their work throughout the whole fall and spring, leading up to that. And then in the big moment, it just happens. So.
Well, Jason,
Remember
wasn't
that
Ridge all defensive team that year, or what? Didn't we have a pitcher on the all defensive Southland team?
He was the pitcher on the all defensive the Southland all defensive teams. I mean, he was.
Yeah, Spence is right, man. He hit it right there.
Yeah, remember Jose is an actual ninja. I mean, so hitting the ground ball and throwing it to third base is really not a big deal for him. It's a big deal for a lot of pitchers, that's for sure. But it's really not a really big deal. We're blessed that year with those guys who took, like Spencer said, took pride in that work, and there's a lot of guys take pride in. They're athletic enough to do it, which is it goes to the staff, and finding those guys. I mean, that's finding a ninja to close games out, that collects outs. So I think that goes to the guys on this call that did a good job doing that.
When you have a literal black belt out there pitching, don't have to worry about anyone rushing the mound or anything like that. But
yeah, he's going to handle himself.
I'm pretty sure about 2 or 3 minutes after that double play, everybody wanted to rush home plate because David Fry gets ahead in the count on a guy he's seen for the second time. And, when you go back and rewatch the game and you listen to Greg Swindell, I mean, how many times we all played growing up. Some of us obviously better than others. Some of us obviously worse than others. That's why we're hosting a Zoom call and not coaching or playing anymore. But, Greg Swindell, when he sees Dave take the swing, his comment is he's trying to do that right now. So Dave, for everyone that's ever been told you don't try to hit a home run, you just happen to hit them. You get ahead 2-1, 3-1. The scoreboard on left field had 3-1. The bug on ESPN had 2-1. At that point, are you trying to hit a home run?
No, I wish I could say I was. I had actually kind of throughout the tournament, I had a few good at bats, but for the majority, I was kind of pulling off everything and wasn't taking very good swings. And Barbe never really said a lot to me throughout the year about my swing, but he kind of, in the middle of the Nichols game, he was like, "Hey man, like all your energy is going towards third base. You got to try to stay through the middle." And I did that in my last at bat against Nichols, and I was trying to do it against UNO, but still kind of pulling off. And on that swing, it kind of looked like I was trying to hit it off the foul pole, and it wasn't my thought process, but that's what my swing was doing. And luckily, it crept over the fence.
Vince, you talked about being in the bullpen and everyone kind of going crazy. And Bob, I've always said you're one of those guys that if you look at you, you never know if you're up 10, down 10, with rare exceptions. But I got to ask Taylor, when Dave ran by you there at third base, what did you say anything? Did you say anything you can say on here? Do you remember saying anything?
I kind of blacked out for a second, to be honest. I mean, I was pretty hyped, and I mean, my hand was pretty sore the next day, and I mean, he smoked it when it coming around third, and but like you said, yes, I did yell some things, but we can't repeat those things because we were excited, and it was such a big moment. And for me at third base, when you hit it, it felt like we won. Like that was once that happened, I felt, I was like, it's over. Like we're not going to lose, and the game was tight. They were kind of, like you said, they had that momentum and they were kind of coming back, and that kind of, with them having to play as many games as they did, and they were pretty gassed, and man, they gave really good effort and fought hard. But it really just felt like that just took the air out of him. That finally just, put him away. And obviously we had to go finish the game. But for me, I said, all right, this is it. Like, we're going to win. And, it was just a gut punch for him.
Well, Dave has the big gut punch. You go up one. But more importantly, once you watch the rest of that inning unfold, JP LaGreco hits a double. Luke Watson singles him home. You have a runner thrown out trying to score. Not a big deal. You're up two. But for you guys as coaches, the importance of getting that second run to push it to 7-5, especially in light of the guy getting into scoring position in the ninth.
Yeah, you just feel more comfortable, and especially because they have some guys run the ball at the ballpark. It's not really a home run type of park. You really kind of got to get it. But you don't the stress of when you're making a 2-run game, the stress of every hitter coming up being able to tie it kind of leaves you. And when you get a guy on base and they can end it, that leaves you. And that's obviously it wouldn't matter. We end up winning by 2, but I do think it'll alleviate some pressure. But again, it's not something that we haven't played in all year long. It was kind of our MO. We played a lot of tight games, and I think that it prepares you. It prepares you to whenever you don't get that opportunity a ton. When you can play for a championship, but as much as you can. And we can't prepare our team at practice to play for a championship, but throughout the season, having those tight games over and over and over again, believing you can win it, having somebody in the back end of the game that you trust, that the players trust. I think a closer is great, and you hope they throw 97 and all strikes and get everybody out. But our team trusted Jose in the back end, and they trusted Pig in the back end and Danny in the back end, and what that allows you to do, it allows you to fight when the game's tight, because that you have somebody or multiple guys back there that can come in and close the game out. They're going to come in and compete for you. Jose threw 87, 88, maybe a 90 every once in a while with a changeup. But he's going to throw strikes and give us a chance to win. I think that helped this team a bunch.
Well, running out a little short on time here, so we'll kind of jump ahead to the bottom of the ninth. Runner on second base, full count. To Colin Morrell, and Jose gets the rollover ball to second base. At that point, everybody we can go around the Zoom here, and as that ball is going to second, we'll start with Bert. A couple of hops to Luke Watson. It should be easy. Your thoughts at that point?
Yeah. Well, first thought is it takes me right back to where or kind of how it took place. And so Bob is standing on the steps on the home plate side of the dugout calling pitches, and the rest of us are kind of along that line. And when the ball goes on the ground and you can see that Luke's got to play at it, Bobby took like 4 steps back off the steps all the way to the back end of the dugout. And I remember, does he not want to watch the play? Is he really excited? And as soon as the umpire signals out, his hands go up, and it became a 5 or 6 man hug with Bob in the middle. But I just my mind automatically goes back to, oh man, we got to play at this. And I turned, and Bob's nowhere to be found, where he was all the way in the back of the dugout, and we almost kind of had to go backwards to celebrate and hug. And so in my mind, that's what I can see. I turned to my left, and he's not even there. But then once this kind of celebration begins, I know for me, it was how gratifying it was for 2 reasons. One is I had no idea until we got really deep into this thing what it meant to the people of Natchitoches and to Northwestern State baseball being the first team, or first in school history or program history, being the team that did that. It was the calls, the text, the way that celebration took place that night. I had no idea. It's a big thing, but I had no idea how much it meant to all the people that have been Demon baseball forever. And that was such a gratifying experience. And the other is what winning a championship in 2018 meant after the season we had gone through in our first year altogether in 2017. Like the way we took learning experiences, the way we revamped the roster, got the pieces we needed, got the players that we needed, whatever. And then you saw the fruits of that labor kind of come out, so to speak. Like but once we got really deep into and we're celebrating, it was gratifying to see what it meant to everybody else, and it was gratifying for me as a coach to know how well we as a group had taken 17 and rolled that into success in 18, and we took that adversity and made something great out of it.
Spence, I guess you were still in the bullpen at that point when the game ended. Did it look like a relay team running out or ready to get out of the starting blocks?
It did. I mean, at that point, we were riding with Jose the whole way, and I remember it was me and Tib were down there, and Tib's fully geared up, and the ball gets hit, and as soon as Luke catches the ball, that gate busts open, and I mean, I'm running as fast as I can, and Tib is like hauling, and he's right there with me, and we're dead sprint down the warning track, and I remember the dugouts clearing. I mean, they're dog piling, and so I'm heading to all the coaches there at the end, and I have to hurdle the cameraman's cord to not bust it right there. And yeah, we meet, and it was awesome, and we hugged it out. I think Bob gave me the biggest hug I've ever had in my life because he was so excited, and it was just a pretty special moment. And going back to on the bus, I remember we pulled up to the park, and Bob's, like I said, keeping it short, talking to the team, and he says, and I'll never forget it, he says, today is going to be really special. And I don't know if he just had a feeling, I don't know if he knew, but when he said that, I feel like that kind of stuck with me. And then in that moment after we won, it was special. I'll tell you that much right now.
Dave, you hit the homer to go ahead. You tied the game earlier. You get to catch the final out on a little bit of a lollipop throw there. For a guy that spent 4 years in this program and saw so many near misses, a second place finish as a freshman, you don't make the tournament as a junior, and then you win it and you're the MVP as a senior, and it just wraps up what was an All-American season for you. Your thoughts as that slow hopper went to second base and you waited for the throw to hit your glove?
Yeah, it was a pretty special feeling. I remember I think it was the tying run at the plate, and so I was kind of hugging the line, making sure he couldn't get a double, and saw as well to my right, so I went to the bag praying Luke wouldn't spike it into the dirt. And then whenever I caught it, it was just I didn't know what to do. I was just so excited. I'm running to the dog pile, and Donovan Anuka decleats me, just full form tackle, nails me to the ground. So get like a broken rib after that, so that was nice. But then after that, I mean, just think about it. I was being my senior year, I was extremely close with this staff, and getting to hug it out with them, and it was a special moment. And like Bert was saying, like people coming out of the stands, I mean, players from past who I had never met before in my life, like hugging me and tearing up, telling me how much it meant to them was pretty special that they cared that much and how much it means to the school and that town. It was a special night.
Coach Dugas, you're over there. I mean,
think
you're kind of in the same position as Bert, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a big part of what I did that year was, kind of moving around infielders, kind of shifting them for certain hitters. And I remember being a little nervous right there because they had Morrell up at the plate, and I hit 3 hits in the game, and he was swinging the bat really well. So obviously, him being a left-handed hitter, Jose on the mound felt pretty good. Pull side ground ball would probably come. Watson made the play, and I think the most nervous I was for the whole play was Dave actually catching the ball, because there was multiple times during that season a throw would hit him in the chest and he would just drop it for some reason. I don't know why, but you caught it and we won. So I'm just glad you caught it.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to watching that, and we'll get to Coach here and say we got to work on the dog pile, because it looked like Jose, speaking of the ninja, didn't want to go down at that point. He and Kelsey were kind of back and forth on who was going to end up on the bottom of the pile. But Coach, there's a great shot there at the end when they have, you go through the line and you look up and you see your dad, you see your family. For you played here, you were on a regional team, you were on a conference championship team here. You bled purple for about half your life now. And just how special was that? I mean, obviously talking to you, you can go back on YouTube and find the interview you and I did. And I mean, it was very clear the emotion that was uh, on the surface with you. And I'm sure nothing has changed in the 2 years when you go back and look at that night.
No, and I think I've coached in some big games before where with Taylor, we won a regional over at Georgia Tech, and had a super regional game to go to Omaha and all those things. I've coached in those big, but nothing compared, and I think it just, you had to have heard about the fact that we hadn't won a tournament. I got to hear it while I played, right? Or when I was an assistant here the first time. And you got to see it through text messages. And I mean, like Taylor said, I mean, I very rarely got nervous for games. If you know me, I'm kind of who I am. And, that's the world sometimes, I guess you can say. But it was tough that day. And after we won, because of that, I mean, there must have been 200 texts I got from people that were traveling from Natchitoches coming to the game, coming to see the Demons win it for the first time, and to be honest, with what UNO had to go through, we needed to win it. We had the easier road as far as, not having to play. And as the specifics of that inning, I did not want to get to McGee. I saw Owen McGee in high school. I knew exactly the hitter he was. He could run the ball a yard, pull side, left field. To get him out, you had to pitch to the opposite side of the plate. You had to go to Jose's glove side, which was Jose's weakest part of his game. Jose's best pitch was his changeup, and he could really throw the fastball arm side, but that was also playing McGee's strength. So when they got the hit to make it, I was just thinking, man, we got to everything we can do to get this out, because we don't want to get, and that's the respect we had for McGee. And he hadn't had a great game to that point. But just like Dave hadn't had a great game to that point before he hit the homer, good players normally show up. So I was glad we got it done then. And I don't even remember. I remember being down in the dugout, like Bert said, but I don't remember why. So I have no idea why that happened. Maybe I just had the ultimate faith in Luke to make that play, and for us to be able to enjoy that moment. But just so special for our town, our community, and just can't. I mean, the guys on this Zoom call, the guys on that team, you learn as you get older in the coaching profession, as you coach more guys, it's about them. It is really about them. It is about, we didn't do a whole lot different than we did a year before. We changed a few things. But we cared about them just like we cared about them the year before. But they found a little something, and we got a little momentum throughout the season, and we got some belief. We had some good starting pitching, which helps that. But, we had guys like Quan have career years, and Dave have career year, and Caleb Ricka have a great year. Sam Taylor had a great year. Sam Taylor's a guy that, didn't have an offer out of junior college because he was hurt, and walked on here and had 2 great years. So just the stories on that team, I guess, is what I remember the most, the people. And I think that's why we do it. We do it for the people. We do it for that. And winning's great, man. It's great. We could talk about it and do all that. But I think, just as good it's been getting to know David Fry, these coaches, and getting to know these people that'll forever be part of our lives. So just glad we got it done so we can keep talking about it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, one last thing before we all head out of here. You kind of touched on it. We touched on the moment after. In the 2 years since, getting a chance to go back and rewatch that, was there anything that you saw from that perspective that you really didn't remember that kind of jogged your memory or stood out that you may have missed in the moment?
Oh, I mean, a ton. And yeah, like the players' reactions is the biggest part. I'm glad Dave knew that ball was going out of the park by the way he reacted, because I didn't. He the last thing we needed was that ball hit the wall and him to run to first base, but that's all right. He knew, so we'll let him slide on that one. But I gave somebody the 3-0 green light, and my dad went palms up behind the stand in the stands during the game. I got to see that. So, and then it was JP, and he ended up hitting a double next pitch. So which was kind of neat. So yeah, there was a ton of stuff that I got to see, and just after the game, hugging the guys, they kind of panned after the game. So it's something that was special, man. It was really special to enjoy it with these guys and our team and our community, that's for sure.
Coach Dugas, same question.
One thing that just for myself, a memory I have forgot about in that game was, and I don't even remember who was running, but we had a base hit to center field and sending somebody home, and I mean they were so out. I mean they were hosed, and Veillon pulled the throw up the first base line, and maybe you can help me. Who do you remember who was running?
It was JP after the double.
It was JP,
Oh.
and then. JP, obviously, I hope he watches this, but he had some of the worst base running turns you will ever find for a pretty fast guy. And just I remember him running past me at third base, and I wanted it so bad, and it was probably a dumb sin, to be honest, unless there was 2 outs. I don't remember, but I remember my heart kind of stopped because I was like, oh my goodness, he's hosed. And throw went up the line, and the catcher caught it, and it's almost like the catcher could have caught it and run and to tag him at home. And I don't know, that play just stood out to me, and I was panicking for a little bit.
Yeah, it was Luke Watson and Greg Swindell and Saltzman both mentioned it, that he had time. He didn't realize. I guess he thought that because the throw was so far off, he had no play. And again,
right.
That's in the 7th inning. And Dave, I mean, when you're in the middle of everything, it seems like out there, getting a chance to rewatch this, anything that stood out or that you've been able to look back on the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot a bunch of parts of that game when they came back and tied it 5-5. I still remembered like how mad I was there standing at first base, probably looking like a 2-year-old, like kicking dirt. But then I remember that play that Dugas was talking about, and the catcher, like, he could have made a play and tagged him. And then Veillon, the kid in center field, like throws his glove, goes palms up to the catcher. And I was like, oh, they hate each other. We're probably going to beat him now. But nah, just a bunch of the little plays in the game. Like after Jose fields that bunt, we get a one-hop double play ball to Sam Taylor leading into the 7th. And that's when kind of momentum swung our way. Something Sam Taylor did all year. And so just little plays like that is kind of the stuff you miss out thinking back about it. But there were really big plays that helped us win the game.
You mentioned he blacked out after your home run. Did you black out when you flexed to the dugout? That's about probably as much emotion as we've seen out of you after a home run. And it's probably a meme that's circulating somewhere in the NSU community at this point.
Yeah, I did. I remember gaining consciousness as I took out Dugas' hand at third base.
Spence, you had moving around, literally moving from, because of the first base dugout to the right field bullpen's a good 250, 260 feet. But you got to see the game from several different angles. And what are some of the things getting back to this as you look back over the last couple of years that you remember? Because you, as we mentioned, you played with a lot of these guys as a teammate, and then you were in your first year on the coaching staff that year.
Yeah, I think seeing like Coach Barbie has said, the emotion, like, I mean, playing with, Dave and T. Smith and Lenny and Quan, Kill, all those guys, like, to see them just, I mean, beyond words with how they felt when we won that game. And then, like, I remember, hugging those guys and like we talked about multiple times today, like all the alumni and the community and like how much it meant. And like, I think it's just, you can't put into words how special it was for everybody, and just to hug those guys and tell them you love them and see how all of that hard work, even from the year before, and then all that to come to fruition and us to win it. That was something, I know we'll all carry with us, forever. I remember like Tyler Smith's throw to second base to get the guy out. I remember I was in the bullpen then, and to see that from that angle was really cool, because I mean, he literally put it right on the money right there. And then, just all the plays. I mean, Dave's homer from the bullpen, and then making I think I made like 10 trips that that game, just sprinting up and down the warning track. But all of it was just really, really special, and I know it's something we'll remember forever.
Bert?
I think my favorite part is going back and then kind of allowing myself to feel those things. And I'm the guy that I think I've kind of trained myself, having been a head coach and having played, like Bob said, in some big games, and the role that I have taken on and try to be good at. When events happen during the game, I try to train myself to not necessarily have the luxury of those emotions, right? Dave's ball goes over the fence, and I've got to start to process, okay, me and Bob are going to start talking about the bullpen. Guys get on base, and it's a big moment, a big double, whatever. Are we pinch running right here? Who's on deck? Are we going to pinch hit? Who's whatever? And so taking on that role and trying to train myself, I find a lot of times that I try to take the emotion out of it and stay in that real moment. And then I've got to process information to begin to take on what it is I do. And then when you go back and watch the games, then I kind of allow myself to feel those things. I allow myself to watch those moments on social media or watch the game again. Lori and I watched it the other night, the first night that you sent it, and having her perspective of what Callan's doing and what my dad was doing, right? We reference Bob's dad a lot too, but my family, what they're doing, what Lori was feeling, what the kids were doing. That's my favorite part, because I feel like, and I'm not trying to play tough guy, but I feel like in the moment, I don't have the luxury of emotion, because then I'm not doing my job well. But going back and doing it allows me to feel those things, and it allows me to attach it to the people. Like Coach mentioned how important the people were. I remember, this is kind of funny, but in line with that story, Dave's ball goes over the fence, and Spence and them are in the bullpen. And so Spence is coaching the bullpen at that moment, and we've got those walkie-talkies. And those walkie-talkies had the clips. And during the tournament, I was wearing the clip, or the walkie-talkie with the clip on the back of my hat. So it's right next to my ear, and it's clipped upside down on the back of my hat. And I'm writing on the game card, and I don't recall exactly what was going on, but I think we were saying, okay, get Larson's legs loose, get Cheney's legs loose, whatever the case was. And so I'm writing all these things that Bob and I are talking about, and Dave's ball goes over the wall. And Spencer, when they start hugging him and Tib or whatever, the button goes off, and they are screaming things in my ear. Like that walkie-talkie is right there. And I remember, like, it's almost like, oh man, am I angry because they're screaming in my ear right there? But I go back and I get to experience it really fun, because in the moment, I try to stick to the information. So,
guys, I certainly thank you for being here, for getting a chance to walk down memory lane. And for those of you who are watching this on nsudemons.com, a reminder that at 6 o'clock we'll replay the full ESPN Plus broadcast of that game, 2018 Southland Conference Tournament title game. If not, thank you for being with us. Thank you for letting these guys take you back and give you maybe a little bit of an inside perspective that you didn't get to see, whether you were at Constellation Field that night, whether you were listening on the radio or watching on ESPN Plus. So, guys, as usual, thank you very much. Dave, certainly appreciate you chiming in from your little bit of downtime there. Best of luck if the season ever gets resumed. I know you're going to continue to represent this program very well, and best of luck as you continue on. Guys, we'll see the rest of you around campus. I see Bert's already in his office, so I'm in mine. So we will see you guys around again. Thank you for taking the time out to talk about it.
Thanks, Jason. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, man.
All right, guys. See ya.
Welcome.